joining me today. I want to wish you a very happy Forget-Me-Not Day. This day, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a day to reconnect with family and friends that you may not get to speak to on a regular basis. So the whole purpose of Forget-Me-Not Day is to be able to call, write, email, anything to let someone that you don't get to see very often or talk to very often, that you appreciate them, that you love them, and that you really just want to let them know that you're thinking about them. So in the spirit of Forget-Me-Not Day, I have created a fun Thinking of You card that features some really beautiful Simon Says Stamp exclusive products. I'm going to be using the Spring Flowers stamp set along with the You Matter stamp and die set. I'll be doing some Zig Cean Color watercoloring, and I'll show you how I created this card from start to finish. Now, for those of you that follow Simon Says Stamp and my work regularly, you may notice that this card has a little bit of a similar feel to this card that I created for the Simon Says Stamp Believe in the Season release. I really loved how the coloring on this card turned out, and I think you guys did too, because a lot of you were asking how I did it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a variation to what I did on this card, and I'll use those same techniques to create the watercoloring on this card. So to get started, I have the Spring Flower stamp set, and I've also got some Bristol Smooth paper. This is technically not watercolor paper, but it does hold up to watercoloring really well, and it also works really well with the Zig Cean Color markers, which I'll be using today. So I'm going to go ahead and take off these stamps from the stamp set, and I'm going to start inking them up with some Simon Says Stamp dye inks. I'm going to first start off with sea glass. I'm going to be doing a blue, yellow, purple, and green color combination. So the first color I'm going to be using is sea glass. And I've chosen some lighter toned colors. Not all of them are really, really light like the sea glass. You can see here this Lemon Zing is a little bit brighter. But I just needed something that wasn't too bold. I didn't want a black outline, but I wanted something that would blend into the coloring that we'll be doing later on. So this is why I've chosen these particular colors. And for those of you that may not have lighter ink colors, maybe you have darker ink colors, try stamping them off onto a piece of scratch paper first before stamping it down onto the paper that you're going to be coloring onto, because that will allow you to get a lighter impression of the color that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and also ink up some of the leaves. I've used both Jelly Bean and Green Leaf inks from Simon Says Stamp. There's not a big difference in color between these two inks. However, you will notice that the Green Leaf is slightly darker than the Jelly Bean. The Jelly Bean is more of a yellow-green, and the Green Leaf is more of a true green, but still lighter in tone. Now, the way I did the coloring on these flowers is that I applied a little bit of color with the Zig Cean Color marker along the area where I wanted the petals to each be darkest, and then I started to blend that out with my water brush. And then the trick with this is that I take a damp baby wipe and I go ahead and dab off the tips of the flowers, and that gives me a more translucent appearance to my watercoloring. And this really adds a really nice feel to the petals, gives them a more translucent look, like I said, but also a bit more of an ethereal look. And I think it really lends to a really beautiful card design. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this for all of the images that I've done here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let you watch the coloring, and then I will come back in a couple minutes when we go ahead to start the next step of the coloring process. Okay, after finishing up most of the coloring, you'll notice that I left some of the petals and the flowers unfinished. Yeah, you can see I left some areas not colored in. And that was because I wanted those petals to be able to have a chance to dry so that as I added in my second layers, as I'm doing now, the color won't bleed. So now I'm able to go back over top of the coloring that we've already done, and I don't have to worry about it bleeding. And I'll go ahead and repeat the process that I did on the first layers for the coloring that I do on the second layers. So here you can see I'm just adding the yellow color onto these petals, and then I'll blend it out with my water brush and dab it up with my rag. Also, for the branches on this particular leaf, you could color these all green, but I decided I wanted to have some brown mixed in, so I just took a beige marker and quickly colored over top of those branches. Because those areas are so small, I didn't worry about adding additional shading. So now that I've colored all my images and that they're fully dry, I went ahead and took the coordinating dies and I'm taping them over top of my images with some washi tape. I just made sure that I neutralized the washi tape on my sleeve so that way the tack wasn't too strong and ripped any of my images. And I'll go ahead and apply all the dies over top of these images, and then I'll go ahead and run them through my Big Shot machine. Once I've run them through my Big Shot machine, I've arranged them onto my card. This is an A2 sized card that's created from some Nina Solar White cardstock. I just arranged them to how I thought they would look best, and then I'll go ahead and start gluing them down. Now to glue these images down, I used a mixture of both some liquid glue and I also used some foam tape. And I just alternated between the foam tape and the liquid glue to get some variation in the depth of where these petals and flowers are going to be arranged. This just adds some interest to the card design and helps it feel more realistic. After I arranged all my petals and leaves onto the card and attached them down, I also took my Martha Stewart mini scoreboard and a stylus, and I'm going to go ahead and add some score lines around the edges of this card base to add a little frame around these flowers, which helps finish off this card panel really nicely. It's very subtle, it's not a distracting frame around this, so it really just blends into the card design and is basically a supporting element, and your eye doesn't really focus too heavily on it. Now, because this is a Thinking of You card for Forget-Me-Not Day, I'm bringing out the You Matter stamp and die set, which is from Simon Says Stamp. I love this scripty U. I think it's beautiful. And I'm going to go ahead and die cut this from some lavender cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm also going to be using that little Thinking of You sentiment, which I will stamp over top of the die cut U that I'll end up cutting out. So here's that lavender cardstock. I'll go ahead and die cut this paper 3 times with that U die. Then I'll go ahead and glue all of those U's together, and I'll attach them down one on top of each other until I have a little bit of a stacked sentiment here, which is basically going to give my sentiment just a little bit more support and also make it feel more like an embellishment rather than just a piece of paper glued onto the card. Once I've layered all of them together, I'll also add some liquid glue to the backside and attach those down onto my card. However, first I decided I wanted to make this U a little bit darker than it was. So I just took the same Zig Cean Color marker that I had used to color in the purple flowers on my card, and I'm just covering over top of that lavender cardstock with that Zig Cean Color marker. And I think this really makes it feel more like part of the card because it matches that purple really nicely, and it's also darker, so it has a bit more contrast. Originally, I thought that lavender cardstock was going to work out okay, but I felt it was just too light, so adding that marker over top really darkened it up nicely and allowed it to have more contrast. I also stamped that Thinking of You in some slate gray ink from Simon Says Stamp right over top of that U die cut. And then to embellish my card, I took a bunch of Pretty Pink Posh sparkling clear sequins. These are a mixture of sizes ranging from 4mm to 10mm. And I just glued these down onto my floral arrangement using some glossy accents. I tucked these in and around the different flowers, just kind of allowing them to be tucked in behind some of them and then some sitting on top. It just adds a little bit of variation and fills in the floral arrangement really nicely. Finally, I wanted to add a bit of ribbon to this card. Now, for those of you that do use ribbon, you know ribbon has a tendency to fray after you handle it too much. The ends, once you've cut them, they start to fray, and they really don't look nice anymore. Well, We Are Memory Keepers just recently came out with their new ribbon cutter, and I really, really love it. And I can't tell you how excited I am about this product, because I use ribbon quite often on my projects, and it always bugged me about the fact that the ribbon would always fray. Well, with this ribbon cutter, I now don't have to worry about it, and I'm really excited to share this with you. So this ribbon cutter is super easy to use. You can see it opens up, and this is the area that you'll go ahead and put the ribbon there on the left. On the right there is the little blade that will cut the ribbon, and it will also heat it up a little bit to bond the fibers of the ribbon together, so that way it'll have a nice sealed edge. I just went ahead and insert the batteries into this ribbon cutter. Bear in mind that it is noted that you will want to store the batteries outside of the ribbon cutter when you're not using it. So when you're not using it, take those batteries out. I'm going to go ahead and lay my ribbon diagonally across the base of the ribbon cutter. I'll fold that down, press the button, and that will go ahead and sear the ribbon to give me a nice clean edge. And look how perfect that is. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the other side. Now, bear in mind, I've already tied this ribbon down onto my card, so if you did this before you tied the ribbon down, it wouldn't be quite so bulky to maneuver. But I wasn't sure when I was creating this card how long of a piece of ribbon I was going to need, so I decided to tie the ribbon bow first, and then I would go ahead and trim the ends and let them get sealed with the ribbon cutter. Alright, well that finishes up this card for today. I hope you've enjoyed this project and got some inspiration for creating some thinking of you cards to send to your loved ones. Be sure to connect with some of your family and friends that you might not get to see very often, especially on Forget-Me-Not Day. It's a very special day, and I think it would be really great to let the people that you have in your life know that you love them, care for them, and wish they were with you. So I hope you've enjoyed. Please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and you can connect with us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, as well as our blog. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you again very soon. Bye!